Hello, welcome back. In the previous part we have added on send message. So now go back to live chat. So we need to edit couple of things inside component mount. First we need to remove this scroll to bottom from component mount, and we need to add component did update lifecycle method, and we need to add this dot scroll to bottom to this component did update. Okay, so I have briefly explained all of those lifecycle methods that are being used inside this application and all of those other lifecycle methods that are not being used inside this application. So go to above and you can find that section in which I have explained every lifecycle method. So component did update always runs when your state changes. For example, with component did update, we need to update our DOM. So if you go inside index.js, everything is rendered with React DOM. So we need to update that tree. So if we go in live chat, then scroll to bottom, we have already talked about it. When we send message, then the state has been changed. So we need to stick our user to be scrolled down after sending message or after receiving message. And then in component did mount, which is going to run just after your render function. So in here, when we click on Robert Johnson, that component did mount function is running inside the code. And that component did mount is fetching all of those messages from our Firebase automatically by itself. So component did mount runs once in a life cycle of the component, or when we refresh our component. Okay, so go in here and we need to fetch our data inside component did mount. So we will write function this dot get list history. Okay, and then we will create this function in here. Okay, and this is going to be arrow function. Okay, before going into get list history, we need to change a couple of things. That things are deprecated inside our newest version of React. For example, we have already talked about inside our lifecycle method. Go and check that section above and then come back. But if you know about the newest versions or the newest lifecycle methods, then don't worry. So in here, the current peer user is not state. Okay, so first of all, we need to add it inside state current peer user. Okay, and we will give it this dot props dot current peer user, and we need to remove this from here. Okay, and then we will update this current peer user in the rest of our live chat. And I'm going to click Control F in here, so it will give you that we have used it 6 times. So if I click in here, in the second time we have used here and in here. So we need to write here this dot state dot current peer user now. Okay, and then click on down arrow, and in here we should write this dot state dot current peer user or this dot state dot current peer user now, because we have added it inside state. So this dot state dot current peer user is updated. Go below again. Okay, so now okay, we are back to our first current peer user in here. So from now onward, we are going to use our current peer user with state. Component will receive props is updated inside React 16, but now we are using React 17, so it is deprecated now. And we will use get derived state from props, so it will always check the state. Okay, I'm going to cancel this and go inside and go here and we'll write static get derived state from props, and it will take two arguments. First is props and state. Why we are not adding this dot current peer user just like before? Because we can't use any of the props in here, so it will always update the state, so we need to add it inside current peer user. Okay, so now from side panel, we have already talked about it. When we calling this live child component, we are passing it current peer user. This is a prop inside a lifecycle method. We are receiving it and we are passing the current peer user with this current peer user. Why we are doing all of the stuff? Go in here. If I click on Robert Johnson, then the prop, the current peer user, is sent from side panel to this live chat is Robert Johnson. When we click on Sam, then the props is changed. So we need to update the specific messages, the specific group ID with the me and with Sam and Desert. So that's why we need to receive props in here, and this static get derived state from props lifecycle method will automatically going to run. So in here we will write check here if props dot current peer user is not equal to state dot current peer user. So in here we are checking if the new prop is not equals to state dot current peer user, then return, and we need to update our current peer user with props, and we need to add current peer user from props dot current peer user. Else, and we do need to write else if part is there. Okay, so we have added state with current peer user, and we are taking current peer user, and after clicking on this button, our current peer user is now changed. So this get derived state from props lifecycle method will run, and it will check if this is not equals to this state dot current peer user, then it will update that peer user in here. Okay, so from now onwards we are using current peer user with this dot state, and in component did mount we are calling get list history, and inside component did update we are calling scroll to bottom, and we will write it later on after writing get list history. So go inside get list history and write if, so we need to write here this dot remove listener is equals to null, and we will check here because this is going to take our Firebase, so we will write this dot remove listener, and then this dot remove listener. Okay, what do we call it as here? If you're not understanding about this dot remove listener, just bear with me, just type this and then you will understand it later on. And then in here we will write list message. First we will write here this dot list message, and it is going to be empty array for now. Go in here, we'll write this dot list message dot length is equals to 0, and we will write this dot set state, we'll write is loading and it's true. If you go below, we have return react loading, and it is taking place with is loading every time when we click on this, so this react loading should be displayed. So we are talking about this, so we'll care about this React loading so that we can get our data while our React loading spinner is displayed there. And then we check if, and now this is the tricky part in which we are going to convert our string with number. Okay, so we'll write this dot hash string. Okay, so we are going to give some hashing in here. Okay, just bear with me. This is the function. We are going to create this and we are going to pass the value. Just remember, we are going to convert string with integers. So what are those strings? First string is this dot, and we write this dot current user ID. Okay, and less than equals to this dot hash string, this dot state dot current peer user, and we'll write it dot ID. Okay, so we'll write if condition or else condition here. Okay, you should know that this is the current user ID. If we go inside here, so the current user ID is in string value. We need to convert it with integer so that we can convert or we can check this string with numbers. Okay, so we are checking this string and we are matching with the current user ID because we need to check, if we can go in here, so we need to check if the current user ID is matching with Robert Johnson inside messages or not. If the current user ID is not matching with this peer user ID, then no messages will be displayed. That means we have no messages yet with this person. Like this, we have no messages. That's why in order to check that, we need to check with hash string. So we need to write this function. We will write this function below, just below your render function. In here we will write hash string. Okay, and it is taking string, and let hash is equals to 0 for loop, let I is equals to 0 and I is less than string that is coming, and check it with length and I plus plus. So this is a typical for loop on the string, and we'll write hash plus equals to, we'll write math dot power function. This is the JavaScript function. First is the base value. We'll write str dot character code at, and we'll give it I. So at every value inside string, it is going to convert with the ASCII value, with the hexadecimal ASCII value. For example, if we have h at the index value of the string, then it will going to convert that h into ASCII hexadecimal value, and we will multiply it with 31, and the power is str dot length minus I, that is here. Okay, and then hash is equals to hash and hash, because we need to convert in 32-bit integer, and then return hash. So we have converted it inside string. Okay, now go above here. If it is less than with the state.current peer user, then we will write this dot group chat ID that we have talked about inside here. We need to update it here. So we will write quote and $, and we'll give it this dot current user ID and we will place dash here, $sign, and give it this dot state dot current peer user dot id. Just see this group chat id and go in here and see this group chat id, the current user dash current peer user id. So this is the group chat id. Whenever we talk somebody inside chat application, we will create the private group chat id so that our messages should be saved inside there. In else part, we will copy this and paste it here, and then we'll just change the placing here, in which we will write this dot state dot current peer user dot id, and in here we will write just this dot current user id. So we have changed the placing. Okay, and now let's talk about this remove listener. Go in here and write this dot remove listener is equal to Firebase dot firestore and dot connection, and we have to go inside messages dot talk, which is going to be this dot group chat id. Okay, we need to specify it that we want this group chat id. It will go and see the group chat id and it will render the message. And as we have talked about inside send messages, in group chat id we need to go inside the timestamp, which is another group chat document, and we'll write dot connection this dot group chat id, because in here we have group chat id and in collection we have same group chat id as in here. And then we need to go another document dot on snapshot, and we will write in here snapshot, give it arrow function. Oops. And inside it we will write snapshot dot doc changes, and we will give it dot for each change. Inside it we will write if condition, if change dot type triple equals, so we will write here change dot type is equals to added or not. So in login strings we have, if we go in here doc property, we have to give it added. So I think we have added inside local storage strings. So we will write here local storage strings dot doc. Okay, so ultimately it will say added. Okay, like we press in here doc is string, go in here and type this dot list message dot push change dot doc dot data. So now inside list message array we have to place dot data, and then update the state this dot set state and give it is loading equals to false, and then write comma and check if error occurred or not. So we need to write this dot props dot show toast. Okay, and write 0 and error dot toString. So you can see inside panel we are passing showToast as well. So in here we will call it if we get error, and toString is a function. Okay, so with this our getListHistory function has been completed. Okay, getListHistory, and at the last, when the component will unmount, we will write function, the lifecycle method will write component will unmount. Okay, component will unmount is a last function that is going to be called automatically when our component removed from DOM. For example, if we go here, then our component is mounted. If we go in here, so during the life cycle of this particular chat screen, or whenever we click on here, this component, or if we refresh it first, then the live chat component is not mounted yet. When I click on this, then the lifecycle method is mounted, and it will always going to run until we click on logout button. When we click on logout button, this particular live chat component is going to unmount, and in here we will call this just, and we will remove listener from here. We will close our listening from Firebase, because in here we are continuously in listening with Firebase, because we are typing messages and receiving messages. All of them are coming in real time from Firebase. So go in here. So let's have a quick break, and then we will be talking about our scroll to bottom and render list messages function, which is going to be a lengthy function. So let's have a quick break here.